Okay, welcome back to another conversation with Chris. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon has a history of mental health struggles. He's moved around a lot. He's dealt with homelessness, some relationship issues. How you doing, Brandon? Nice to see you.
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Chris.
All right, thanks. So yeah, I wanted to hear a bit about your story. I would imagine a lot of it starts with the mental health struggles. Do you mind going into a bit of the issues you've dealt with over the years?
Yeah, sure, no worries. I was born in Denver, Colorado, and grew up a fairly normal childhood. Thought I was normal anyways. And then when I was, I guess it would be 16, I finally went from being homeschooled to a private Christian school, and that's where I started realizing that I had some kind of learning disabilities and different anxiety and different stuff. It wasn't completely diagnosed, but I knew something was going on. Like every time I would take a test, my mind would go blank. I would have my chest would go tight, and I would just freak out and kind of run out of the room. And then when I got to college, my freshman year, I took too many credits. I was taking 18 credits against my advisor's will and doing multiple Bible studies and helping coach girls basketball and watching every movie and playing every video game I never got to play growing up and just kind of went crazy. And I ended up having a nervous breakdown, or what I consider a nervous breakdown. I just had racing thoughts and paranoia and couldn't sleep, was making really long lists of all the things I had to do right then or else. And went to talk to a school counselor about it. Like, I think we need to get you to a hospital. And so they took me to a mental hospital. I just turned 18, maybe a day or two earlier. And they ended up diagnosing me as bipolar just because of how I was presenting. Spent 8 days there and was on several different medications that made me gain a lot of weight and have out of body experiences and just all sorts of really bad side effects. And so, anyways, after that, I think I dropped out of school in freshman year. Tried to go back to a couple community colleges and state colleges here in Colorado. And then, is that you or is that me?
What do you hear?
Just a bunch of women's voices. Like,
Oh, that's the
sorry,
background. Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry. Okay, no, you're good. I was just
Yeah.
sorry. But anyways, yeah. Tried to go to college, never finished college as a result. Just all the medications I was on really affected my memory and concentration, and I was getting like C's and D's. I was like, why am I wasting my life doing this? And so, anyways, decided to go to Bible college in 2010. Had another nervous breakdown there. My family came out and got me, so I didn't go to the hospital that time. And then in 2012, moved to Atlanta, Georgia to do Bible college. Ended up for the first time in my life going into debt as a result of that, and was really stressed out. And then the living situation I was at, they had to move me out because some other people were going to get married and move in. And that was the first time I was homeless. Was I guess I was 26 maybe, and that really affected my mental health. Like I now really have a heart for people that are homeless. I know that most people that are homeless have mental issues, and most people just think, oh, they're drug addicts or alcoholics. I'm like, no, with me, it was none of those issues. It was just really not having a place to live, not having money. And so I kind of couch surfed for a while, had a few different friends that took me in, which was a huge blessing. And slept in my car a little bit if I had to, and then finally found a place to live. And by that time, my mental health was just shot. Like I was just, it was really hard to recover. And so I ended up
Yeah.
going to the hospital. And then they diagnosed me as schizoaffective, which I was like, okay, that makes a little bit more sense than bipolar. It's not, as great. And then over the last, I guess, 10 years, I've been hospitalized, I think 7 or 8 more times. And each time it was like either being homeless or not having money or some sort of just like stress, or even just working. Like this one time I was working 60 hours a week, and that made me had a nervous breakdown. It was just like, I kind of learned like I cannot handle stress as well as most people, unfortunately. And if I'm not getting sleep and if I'm not getting exercise and food and having a roof over my head, I just kind of I call it a meltdown. It's just like
Yeah.
it's hard to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or it's hard to put on my shoes and socks and get out the door. Most people just grab their keys, phone, wallet. For me, it might take an hour of walking around in circles going, do I have everything? What do I need? And
Yeah.
so, anyways, yeah. And I think I've been homeless like 12 times since then. It's just kind of like this recurring cycle. It's like I've moved around a lot. I think I've lived in 6 different states now. And, each time it's either been something with whether it was, I don't know, lack of money or issues with family or roommate stuff or just stuff not working out. All of a sudden I'm homeless, and then the cycle kind of repeats. And in a mental hospital, I have to go home with my family and then get better, move out again, and then here I
All
am.
right.
Uh,
So it sounds
yeah,
like it was all kind of triggered at first when you went from homeschool to like school with like traditional school. Would you say that was
100%.
kind of like
Yeah.
probably some social anxiety and that was some stress for
Yes.
you being in an unfamiliar situation?
Right. And I was really bullied in high school too. Like I got severely bullied just because I was really sheltered and didn't
Okay.
know stuff that most 16-year-olds knew,
Yeah.
and like you said, socially awkward, and just it
Yeah.
was a yeah, it was a brand new environment. And yeah.
So then you said the time when you first went to the mental hospital for like 8 days or so, and they put you on a variety of medications, and they diagnosed you with bipolar, did you say?
Right, exactly.
And would you say that that was an inaccurate diagnosis?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
I'm not bipolar now.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
then
think sorry, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say usually what I've found is that in mental hospitals they have to diagnose you as either bipolar or schizophrenic, or else they cannot put you on medication. Like they
Okay.
literally have to give you one of those two diagnoses in order to start treating you. And so that's what people get labeled as, regardless of what you are. It's like you're one of those two things.
Yeah. And so then they put you on some medication at the time, and that sounded like that made things worse.
Oh, 100%. Like the couple issues I was having, then I had like 8 side effects, and then they would put me on medication
Yeah.
to counteract the side effects and so on
Yeah.
and so forth.
Wow.
And it was just, it was a
Wow, that sounds
mess.
like a mess. So then were you medicated for years, like after that?
Yeah. Yeah. I was medicated from 2005, no, 2004 until 2010, went off medication for 2 years. And then 2012, when I ended up homeless and ended up in the mental hospital, they're like, you have to go back on meds. And I was like, no, look what they do to me. And so I was on medication for several years. And then a couple years ago, got off of it finally.
Okay,
So yeah,
so when you were first homeless, you said that you were off meds for a little while before you became homeless?
exactly. Yeah.
And in
About two
hindsight,
years.
okay, in hindsight, when you look back, do you think it was because you were off medication? Or do you think some of that medication, even for those years, made things worse?
I don't think it was because of the medication. I think it was more circumstantial.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I said,
okay.
like working lots of hours, being homeless. But I mean,
Yeah,
I think most people would say, "Oh, it's because you're off the meds." For me, those were the couple years I was off meds were like the best years of my life. Like I got back in
okay.
shape. I had
Yeah,
great relationships. I had great job. Like I could
yeah,
actually hold down a job for once.
yeah.
Like it was great until I became homeless, and then, like I said, everything just kind of fell apart.
Okay. So when you were first homeless, you were in college, like college age. You were a student or
I
not?
think I was like 26. Yeah, I was in Bible
Okay,
college, so I was technically
okay,
a student. Yeah. Mhm.
okay. All right. And then what was that experience like? I mean, you were moving around, staying with some friends, but were you staying on the streets sometimes? Were you in
I,
shelters or
I
anything?
I had to sleep in my car, I think once or maybe twice. I never got to a homeless shelter. It was just a ton of different friends that like would let me crash on their couch, or had
Okay.
an extra bedroom, or knew someone that had a room I could rent for a week, or it was just kind of
Okay.
bounced around a bunch.
Yeah, right. And then throughout those other times, you said you've been homeless maybe 7 or 8 times, 7 or 8 other times. Were you ever living on the streets? Were you ever to the point where like total despair?
The closest I got was living in the airport in Atlanta back in 2016 when I first moved to Atlanta. Like I bought a one-way ticket there, and
Okay.
then things didn't work out, so I stayed in the airport for maybe 3 nights or something. So I don't know if that's
Okay.
technically living on the
Well,
streets,
that's
but
still an interesting story.
yeah, I felt like
Uh,
I was Tom Hanks from Terminal, walking around
yeah,
with a
yeah, yeah,
toothbrush in my
yeah,
suitcase.
yeah. What was that
Yeah, it was.
experience like? Did you get any trouble in the middle of the night with guards? Like some airports, they're really strict about people sleeping. But what was that
Nobody
experience
bothered
like?
me. I actually met like a bunch of
Okay.
rappers that were
All
like
right.
coming through and like kind of doing the same thing. We were all sleeping. I mean, it was like I don't even remember what area it was, but we were just all sleeping there. The only thing that was hard was like I didn't want to fall asleep because I was afraid of losing my suitcase, which was like all my earthly
Okay.
belongings. And I
Yeah.
think that's probably what normal homeless people go through in the street. Like if you're just out on the street, you can't really fall asleep because you're. I've heard a lot of people
Yeah.
say like their sleeping bag got stolen or their backpack. So that was, I think, the hardest part was
Yeah.
that. And then at that point I actually begged for food. I remember walking around the airport going, are you guys throwing out any food today? Do you have any leftover donuts or any
Yeah.
sandwiches you're throwing out? It
Yeah.
was
Well,
very
I mean, you're
humbling.
laughing now, but I'm curious how at the time did you feel like total despair? Or you were just kind of
Yeah,
using the airport as like a place to feel safe for the while because you didn't know what to do or what?
that's a very good way to put it. Yeah, I guess it was a safe place, but I had no other
Yeah.
option. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a place to
Yeah.
live. I didn't have a job. I just literally was like, this is the only place that's not on the street that I can
Yeah.
stay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was very embarrassing. I'll be honest. Like asking people for help was not something I was raised
Yeah.
doing. It was like,
Yeah.
don't be a burden or don't whatever.
Yeah.
And so it was very hard to be like, hey, can you help me?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And then so over the years, then you kind of got what you think is a correct diagnosis.
Yes, I think so. And I'd rather not say it if that's okay, but
No,
it's
that's
not
fine, of
bipolar or
course.
schizophrenia.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but it's something that's not diagnosed hardly at all because, like I said, like doctors only get paid if they put you on
Yeah.
meds,
Yeah, I get
and
what
they
you're
can only put
saying.
you on meds if you. And I know it sounds paranoid, but like to
No, no,
me,
no,
it's
no, no.
truth, you know.
It's no,
So
I understand and I appreciate hearing that because yeah, I think there's a lot of issues with our and not yeah, like our healthcare system and how we treat mental health as well. And I think because of pharmaceuticals, it creates kind of a game and a money
it
making
is
game, right? Like if
right,
you were put on these meds just because they kind of had to put you on something and had to diagnose you on something, that's pretty ridiculous to be honest.
right. Well, even my psychiatrist one time shared like that, like the what are they called, the pharmaceutical can't think what the reps. They come around and give
Yeah,
free samples of certain drugs, and they're supposed to push
yeah,
those. So even if like you'd be
yeah,
better on this drug, like, well, I have these samples, I'm supposed to push, so try this. And
yeah,
I don't know. To me, it is kind of a, I don't know what you call it, like not a
yeah. Well,
Ponzi scheme, but like a,
yeah,
it's all about
it's
money. But
incentivized. Yeah,
it's not about helping people get better. It's about
yeah,
how can we make the most money,
yeah, yeah.
and it's really frustrating. So
Yeah, well, the pharmaceutical companies have a lot of power because they have a lot of money, and that's yeah, it's like legal drug dealing. It's
yeah,
I don't know that I'm sure there are some that have a heart and do care, but a lot of it is just a money making game and for power and to be able to sell more drugs. The especially when you're prescribed them and think you need them and you're on them, that's like a recurring income every month that those companies make. So they're
yeah,
incentivized by this capitalistic system to to continue to do that. I'm not saying capitalism is just bad, but that's how
right,
it plays out in this form of capitalism for sure in this country.
yeah. Well, it was said to me the hardest part when I first got diagnosed as bipolar in 2004. I remember coming home from college and everyone's like, "What are you doing home?" I'm like, "I'm bipolar," and I thought it was
Yeah,
like not a cool thing, but I wasn't embarrassed of it. But so many people were like, "Oh my gosh, get away from me! I don't want to catch your
yeah,
disease." Or when I got
oh
diagnosed
yeah,
with schizophrenia, schizoaffective, they're like, "Oh, I saw that movie with Ryan Reynolds where he kills his girlfriend and cuts up her head and puts it in the freezer. Are you going to do that to me?" I was like,
yeah,
"No, that's a movie. Like,
yeah,
what the heck?" And so I think even now, like, what is this? 20 years later, I feel like there's still so much fear of the unknown, and there's like, I don't know if you say misinformation, but like people don't understand mental health, and
yeah,
they really either fear it, reject you, or stigmatize you. And it's like,
yeah,
I don't even like talking about it a lot because, like I said, people just have their preconceived notion of, oh, my grandpa was that and he killed himself. Are you going to do that? Or
yeah,
my
yeah,
ex-boyfriend did this and he hit me. Are you going to do that? It's like, no, I'm
yeah,
not a monster. I'm just a guy that struggles with
yeah.
chemical imbalances sometimes.
So it sounds like there's been kind of a lot of waves, like ups and downs throughout these years, where you
Yes.
might have like
Yeah.
kind of an episode kind of thing,
Hmm.
something triggers something, and then that led to homelessness. Is that generally how it was?
Exactly. Yeah, for the
Yeah.
most part. And then the thing
Okay.
is, like, the hospital would only release me to my parents. Like, some people in the hospital, they could go home to a roommate or a girlfriend. For me, it was like, unless your parents come get you, we're not letting you go. And so my parents took me in. I think out of the 9 times I was hospitalized, I think 6 times they took me in. And that
And
was
this
really
is as
hard
an
on them, like
adult.
having to, as an adult. Yeah, like I said, it started when I was 18
Yeah.
up until
Yeah.
just last year. And so, for them, they'd almost have to nurse me back to health. Like, once again, when I say nervous breakdown, I don't mean like, it was like one day I couldn't get out of bed, the next day I'm fine. It was like literally like 6 to 9 months where I could not take care of myself
Wow.
really, or I definitely couldn't work for that time. Like any stress would just like, I would just melt down like a 2-year-old almost. Like, like it was
Wow.
really tough. And so for them, it really took a toll on them having to really kind of, like make my meals and like not
Yeah.
like change me, or, I could get dressed, I could shower,
Yeah.
but like for the most part, I was completely dependent on them as an 18-year-old, a 24-year-old, a 28-year-old. And I
Yeah.
think that was hard on them. Even their friends were like, why is Brendan still living with you? It's like, well, he tried to move
Yeah.
out and then he got homeless and in the hospital and now he's back. And,
Yeah.
it's really been tough to like almost
Yeah.
have
I
that as
bet.
like your identity or your story. It's like, yeah, I'm just some guy that's always homeless and in mental hospitals.
Yeah.
Like, I can't really get traction or get ahead.
Yeah.
But
And during these periods of like months of the mental breakdown, as you say, like, what is your state of mind during then? Are you like in a panic state the whole time, or how are you generally
not
feeling?
not panicked. I would say just easily, I don't want to say triggered, but like easily overwhelmed. Like it's really
Okay.
easy to have a panic attack or to get, overwhelmed. A lot of it was depression. I think especially as
Okay.
a guy, you're supposed to be working, earning money, and when
Yeah.
you're not out there, it's like, even for me, I don't feel like it was so much that I felt like a failure, but everyone around me was like, hey, men are supposed to work. What are you doing at your parents' house? And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you don't really understand. And so I kind of felt like, a failure, like a less than, or I'm not contributing to society,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
not paying taxes and not, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. And so that was really, really tough. But yeah, I mean, like, mostly it was just, like I said, it was just things that most people do, like making a ham and jelly sandwich, getting your keys in your wallet, like those things could
Yeah.
take an hour or more. And it's like, I don't understand how to explain it, except for like I think my brain was just so overloaded or so fried from stress,
Yeah.
from lack of sleep, from wondering where I was going to sleep that night, whatever, that it just got to a point where I couldn't really function like most people do. So,
Yeah. And then during these times with doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, hospitals or whatever, did anybody ever try to get you to try other forms of therapy besides just medicating you?
do you mean like shock therapy, or like mushrooms, or like
Any
what do you
kind.
ask? Or just,
Yeah, like any
um,
kind, even just talking to talking to a therapist or
oh yeah,
meditation or breathing or any kind of
yes.
ways to.
I think it was 2013 or 2014. I got put in a program called, oh my gosh, I just, was it not PATS? Epic. It was early psychosis intervention prevention. Is that Epic? EPIC. Early
Epic,
psychosis intervention care or something like that.
maybe.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
anyways, I was part of the first program. It was a program from Australia that worked on mindfulness and worked on grounding and
Okay.
different CBT therapy, cognitive behavioral
Uh-huh.
therapy.
Behavioral therapy. Yeah.
And that really was like a game changer. That is like, I feel like a turning point, even though I've still had hospitalizations since then, like it really helped me learn, like when you're having a panic attack, do these breathing exercises, or,
Yeah.
focus on what you smell and what you see, or even just touch your fingers together and be like, I'm, like right now I'm touching my fingers and focusing on that, not my chest. It feels like
Yeah.
an elephant on it. And
Yeah.
that was awesome. Like I had a really good counselor, really good doctor. He almost became a friend. And I remember one day I said to him something like, man, I'm nothing more than a walking mental illness. He goes, no, don't ever say that. He's like, you're a man that struggles with mental illness. You're not a walking mental. This isn't your identity.
Yeah.
This isn't.
Yeah.
He goes,
Yeah.
you can still do anything you want to do. And I was like,
Yeah.
because everyone else has kind of been like, you're crazy and you
Yeah.
are gonna fail and you can't. And he was like, no, like you can still have an amazing life. He goes, some of the most successful, richest, most famous people had what you have.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? And he started
Yeah.
naming off like, all these artists and musicians and, billionaires. And I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so that was awesome. So yeah, and I think I was almost always going to a therapist or a counselor as well as
Okay.
a psychiatrist. Like for the most part, those work hand in hand. The thing I've found the last, say, 7 or 8 years, a lot of my friends have talked to a lot of people I met online. I'll just go into chat rooms or different apps and talk to people about everything and anything.
Yeah.
And they all say they can't afford therapy. And I think that is a huge issue. Is like, my parents' generation was like, you don't go
Yeah.
to therapy because
Yeah.
it's going to show weakness. And then this generation is like, we want to go to therapy and we can't afford it. And
Yeah.
so I actually got certified as like a counselor. I can't get paid for it, but I can do like, it's called like lay counseling. And so I
Uh-huh.
can like counsel people without like the actual, having an office and
Yeah.
being paid for it. And so I would go on these apps and I'd be talking to people at midnight and like, hey, I'm suicidal. I'm like, oh, cool, let me help you. And
Yeah. Yeah.
like, cause I was like, man, I hate that people can't afford the help
Yeah.
that they want or need. And so many people have been abused or have been, had addictions or whatever. And it's like, they
Yeah.
want help, they want healing, but they're just like, I don't have the money. And it's really
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Was were any of these hospital visits or whatever, like the cost related to those? Were any of those partly responsible for you becoming homeless, would you say? Or have you had like financial support through all of
Yes.
that?
No, I actually ended up going through bankruptcy in 2015 because I had, I think it was like $80,000 of medical
Oh
bills, like from hospitals. And
man.
then I had, I think it was like, I don't know, $10,000 of credit card debt, which to some people that's nothing. To me,
Yeah.
like I said, I wasn't able to work for 6 or 8
Yeah.
months at a time. So like some years I made $1,000, $5,000. So like
Yeah.
$80,000. So I went through bankruptcy in 2015 just to kind of clear it out. And then since then
Yeah.
I've had several more hospitalizations. So I just have a lot of medical bills stacking up and trying to make payments on them. But yeah, that is a huge thing that even with insurance, most mental hospitals, I want to say it's like $1,000 a day or so that they
Yeah. I
charge.
believe
And it's
it.
because of the medications. It's like, I mean, even if they take your blood pressure, it's like $200, or they,
Yeah.
take your, blood sample, it's like 800, it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, look at this bill, like, oh my God. But the main thing is the medications are like, there was one medication I was on in 2005, it was $1,000 a month with insurance. And I was
Wow.
working 3 jobs just to like, pay for this medication. Back then I was making $5 an hour. So I was working 3 jobs,
Oh,
80 hours a week just to pay for this stupid medication that gave me, like I said, like probably 10 different side effects. I gained 50 pounds in 3 months. I had out of body experiences. I used to play basketball, and my
yeah.
reflexes were so slow. They would throw the ball, it'd hit my chest, roll off out of bounds, and then I would clap like
So
five
you're kind of
seconds
like a
later.
zombie.
I was that's what I mean. You look at pictures of me, my eyes were like almost like kind of red and like
Wow.
almost like it wasn't a soul in there. I hate looking at pictures for that a couple of years. It was just like that's not me. That was like a shell
Well,
of who I was.
it also sounds like to some degree, like the cost of the medication, the debt, medical and credit card debt, like that probably exacerbated the symptoms as well because that created a lot more stress, I would imagine.
That's what my parents said. They said that when I was living with them and I was in debt, they saw like my sleep and my stress levels, and they're like, "You're not even yourself." Like
Yeah.
the last time I lived with them a few years ago, they're like, "You're not allowed to have any credit card debt, car payment, like no debt at all if you're living with us," because they're like, when you
Yeah.
have debt, you're a completely different person. Not in like a angry monster. It's just like I was stressed and
Yeah.
not sleeping and not able
Yeah.
to function.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
and then
I know you, sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was going to say one thing that I noticed or that I learned in 2012 when I was homeless the first time. There's this crazy rule in the US that you can't get a job without a place to live, but you also can't get a place to live without a job. And the reason you can't get
Wow.
a job without a place to live is they have to have somewhere to send your W-2s and taxes or
Yeah.
paychecks to. And the reason that you can't get a place to live without a job is you have to show proof of income. And
Yeah.
so eventually, thankfully, one of my friends was like, "Hey, you can use our address and say you live here, and then you can get a job. And then once you get a
Yeah.
job, you can get an apartment." And that worked. But that's another thing, like for homeless people are like, "Oh, just go get a job, man." It's like, no, like if you literally don't have, even I tried to get a post office box, you can't get a post office box without a physical address. So it's like
Wow.
you're
Yeah,
literally,
that's
unless
true.
someone's going to either take you in or say, use my address, you cannot get a job, you cannot get a place to live. And that's been my biggest obstacle. Even just when I moved to Colorado 6 months ago, um, or I moved back here, I should say. I was, born here, but I've been gone for 13 years. When I moved back
Yeah.
here, I was homeless for 2 months because once again, I couldn't get a job, couldn't get a place to live. A hotel doesn't count as a,
Yeah.
residence. And it was just like, that was like the most stressful thing was like, once again, I think people just don't understand how hard it is for homeless people to get out of that. And like I said, most people I've met that are homeless, they have mental illness. It's
Yeah.
not drugs, alcohol, whatever else. It's just,
I have heard that like a lot of
that
times it's like less than 50% are actually there because of drug addiction. But yeah, then that
yeah,
creates just an endless cycle that you're just trying to dig yourself out of. And especially when you already have like debt like that, then it's like you're constantly digging yourself out of your grave, huh?
yeah, exactly. So it's really, like I said,
Wow.
I think if anything, my experience has opened my eyes to have empathy for a lot of different, I don't know if you say people groups or types of people that most people don't
Yeah.
really care about, or even they fear, like,
Uh-huh.
oh, roll up your windows, lock the door, it's a homeless guy, or
Yeah.
oh, that guy's
Yeah.
bipolar, watch out for him. Like, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, these are just normal people. Just like, I mean, I feel like I'm normal, even though
Yeah.
my story is maybe not normal. It's like, I don't
Yeah.
feel like I'm any different than someone that just went to college, got a degree, got married, has the house and the kids. And,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, yeah.
So you say it's been about a year since you had an episode.
Yeah.
And would you say like this last year you've been, pretty good? Like you feel like
Honestly,
life is good
no.
or
So
oh, okay.
a year ago, it's kind of a long story. I won't get into any details, but I had some family drama. I started setting boundaries and kind of sticking up for myself for the first time in my life and saying, "Hey, you won't talk to me like that. Or I don't appreciate when you
Yeah.
do that." And so my family actually thought they're very religious. They thought I was demon possessed because I was
Yeah,
saying
okay.
no and don't. And so they tried to get me to go to this like deliverance minister or whatever. And I was like, no, I'm not
Oh
crazy. I'm just setting
wow.
boundaries. And, I grew a set of balls. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
anyways, back in July last year, my parents kicked me out and I was homeless for 7 months. That was the longest I've been homeless for. And that really took a toll on my mental health. Like,
Yeah.
it's been really tough. And then for the first time since 2015, when I had the bankruptcy, I actually went into credit card debt just because I was, living at hotels and Airbnbs and trying to get food and trying to
Yeah.
survive. I ended up getting rid of my car just to get rid of that payment. And then, but then it's like with Uber and the bus, I was spending like $800 a month just to get
Oh
around. So
man.
it's like, okay, I got rid of $1,000 to spend 800. That's great. So yeah, so I feel like I'm just in the last couple months. Like I finally found a place to live in February, March. I got a car.
Okay.
Kind of started doing some gig work just to have a job, and now it's
Yeah.
like, I still got the debt. I've still got whatever, but I'm like, at least I'm not
Yeah.
homeless and carless and jobless. It's like
Yeah.
so yeah, it's been a rough year to be honest.
Wow. Well, man, that's pretty intense. And for those 7 months or whatever that you were homeless, were you living on the streets then, or you always end up finding places to stay, kind of?
Yeah, I had a couple of friends that took me in at times. Went up to Virginia to stay with a friend in his property. I went to Israel. A friend out there offered me a place that ended up not working out, so I was just in
Okay.
hostels and hotels there.
Yeah.
And then came back here to Florida. I was living in Florida at the time. The hurricane had hit while I was in Israel, so even the homeless shelters were like completely full. Hotels were full. Everyone's like, "Dude, there's nothing for you here." I was like, "Well, I guess I'll move back to Colorado. At least I have some friends there." And then came
Yeah.
here, and I actually started doing some pet sitting just to avoid hotels. I mean, I
Yeah.
did stay in hotels for a week or two, but did some pet sitting just to kind of have a place to stay in exchange for
Yeah.
taking care of the pets.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, finally was able to get a place to live and a job and a car.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, yeah, like I said, I've never actually slept. Well, no, this last time I slept in a stranger's car. I met a guy at this hotel. I had stayed there one night, and then I had to check out. And he just kind of started talking to me. What are you doing? I was like, well, I stayed here last night. I don't have money for another night. He goes, you can sleep in my truck if you want. And
Yeah.
that was, to me, I would say I hit rock bottom at that point. Sleeping in a stranger's car in a hotel parking
Yeah.
lot, that was like the worst thing in my life. I was like, okay, I got to figure something out. And that's when I came here. And
Wow.
so, yeah, like I said, I mean, I guess some people wouldn't consider me being homeless if I haven't slept on a bridge or
No, no,
in a
it's still
park.
like
But I'm like, it's still not having a place to
yeah.
put your stuff or lay your head or
Yeah.
call
It's
home,
hard to
whatever that
have
is.
stability. It's hard to have stability when you're not in like your own place, mentally and physically. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a friend who's a counselor. Or I don't know if she's a counselor, therapist, psychiatrist, but she said that not knowing where you're going to lay your head at night is the most stressful thing on the psyche. She goes,
Yeah.
Brandon, like I don't think you're crazy. She goes, anybody that didn't have a place to live for 3 months, 7 months, whatever, like anybody would have psychosis and have the
Yeah.
things that you had. Like that's just normal. I was like, oh,
Mhm.
thanks. I feel kind of
Yeah.
weird, you know.
Yeah.
So, anyways, and like I said, I think right now, especially in Denver, I don't know statistics. Is it 500,000 or 1 million people that are homeless? Like every time I drive on the highway, there's like all these tents everywhere downtown. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm not the only person. And that's what I realize is like, okay, this is a huge problem. How do you change it? And I think it comes from changing the law. Like I said, if the law is that you have to have a place to live before you can get a job or vice versa, I'm like, that's probably the first thing that needs to be
Yeah.
erased, because like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. It's like these people can't even get ahead unless they have a family member or a friend that takes them in and says, use our address and stay here for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
They're literally hopeless,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I mean, this is just Denver, which is a relatively smaller size city, and there's a lot more homelessness all around, all across the country. Yeah, it's pretty terrible, especially the
it
last few
is.
years, I feel.
Yeah. And I heard a statistic like there's more empty homes. I don't know if you could call them foreclosed or people just
Yeah.
left
Yeah.
than there are homeless people. And I don't know if that's a solution to say, hey, homeless people can just start taking over these homes that are abandoned. But I mean,
Yeah.
it is an interesting statistic that it's like they have the housing for them. People just don't, whether it's the banks or the whoever, they just don't want homeless people
Yeah.
moving in,
Yeah.
which is tough.
Wow. Well, Brandon, I got to say, it's been a pretty eye-opening story. It's been great hearing your story. Is there
Thanks,
anything
Chris.
else you can think of to share before we end?
I guess just I don't know. I was thinking about this right before I called you. I don't know if you want to get into the S word, as far as not. Well, I don't know if I can say it. Can I say it
Sure.
about like? And like I really struggle with suicidal thoughts, especially because of
Oh, okay. Yeah.
what I went through. Is that okay to talk about?
Yeah, of course.
Or if you need to edit it out, you can. But I was gonna say that's one thing I just want to give people hope. Like I don't want to say tried to commit suicide. I've been at the point where I was about to end my life more times than I can
Yeah.
count, and just feeling that despair. I just want to give people hope. Like on your darkest day, when you feel like you can't go on one more day, I feel like that's like when like you shouldn't give up. Because like for me, like, there were so many times I was like, there's no way I can go on one more night, one more day, whatever. Just asking God end my life. I'd wake up in the morning and go, what the heck? Why didn't you kill me? Why am I alive?
Yeah.
But then it's like all of a sudden you get a good night's sleep and you're like, wow, I feel like I can go on another day. And or
Yeah.
someone comes along and helps you out, buys you a meal, or lets you sleep
Yeah.
at their house, or even I had a friend come help me clean my room one time. That was like a game changer. I went from having a mountain of trash and, clothes, and it was like, wow, now I have a clean room. I can actually sleep.
Yeah.
And so I just want to give people hope. Like, if you're feeling hopeless, like, please reach out. There's lots of suicide hotline numbers, or even just a friend or family member. Like, don't end your life because you feel like you can't go on. Like, that's
Yeah,
one
for
thing I'm really
sure.
glad that I didn't end it all those years ago, and even just recently, like,
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's great. Great. Great advice. Great words. Well, it sounds like you're doing better, at least at the moment. It sounds like things
yes,
have you have a bit more stability in your life, at least.
yes,
And that's, I think, the more stability you have, probably the less chance you have of having another, breakdown and becoming homeless. But
yeah. They talk about in the
yes,
hospital. They talk about your network. Like, who's your network? Who's your friends? Who's your
yeah,
family? Or not your network? Your support. Excuse me. Your support
yeah,
system is huge, and that's the thing. Most people that have mental illness, people kind of distance themselves from them because it's scary or it's weird or different, and it's like those people need support more than the normal person that doesn't have mental illness.
yeah,
So that's kind of who I kind of try to look out for now, is the outcasts, or the people that don't have friends, or aren't as, you know I don't know what the word is, not attractive, but you know what I'm saying. Like, it's not like,
I
oh, I
get
want
what
to
you
be their
mean.
friend. I'm like, that's
Yeah, yeah,
that's who
yeah,
I try
yeah,
to reach out to now, because I know how
yeah.
that feels to be
People
the
that need
person that is
support. Yeah.
ostracized. And yeah,
Hmm. I guess one
yeah.
other thing is, I know you mentioned going to Bible school and everything, and your family being very religious. Is religion still like a big part of your life?
It is, yes. I mean, honestly, people always ask me if I'm religious, and I say I hate that term because I feel like
Yeah,
nothing positive comes from that. People think homophobic, religious, judgmental,
yeah.
hypocritical. So for me, I don't even really say I'm more spiritual. I just say I have a relationship with God. And
Okay.
like, that is the one thing that's carried me through these last 20 years of the mental illness, the homelessness,
Yeah.
everything I
Right.
went through. Is like, I mean, I honestly don't know how people get out of bed in the morning without having God. Because even with God, like, I've barely gotten out of bed hundreds
Yeah.
of days the last 20 years. But yeah, so like, I go to church. It's more for fellowship, just to like have a hug or have
Yeah.
friends
Yeah.
to hang out with and stuff. Or
Yeah.
but I'm not like the Bible thumper, gays are going to
Yeah. Okay.
hell and
Yeah.
you're in sin. Yeah, I try not to be that person, because I know how it
No.
feels
Yeah.
to
I
be
get it.
judged, or to
Yeah.
be, whatever. But yeah, I think, yeah, definitely faith is a big part of my life.
Yeah. I was gonna say, it sounds like faith was a big um a guide for you to, stay alive and to carry on. But did you get much help from the church over the years?
Honestly, unfortunately not. I've actually been kicked out of several churches once I opened up to them about my mental health struggles. I actually had a pastor one time in Florida email me and say, "Hey, it was nice to meet you and your parents yesterday. Thanks for sharing your story. Because of what you shared, if you come back to our church, we'll call the cops on you and have you removed." And I was
Wow.
like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, we had a guy several years ago that also had mental illness, and he brought a gun to church, and it wasn't a good thing, and we just don't want to go through that again." I was like, "Well, I don't
Wow.
have a gun, and I would never do that." He goes, "It doesn't matter. We can't take chances. Don't come back." And I was like, "Okay." And so,
Wow.
yeah,
That's got to make you
honestly,
question a bit, at least some aspects of the church, huh?
yes.
Wow,
So yeah,
that's pretty
actually,
awful.
my dream is to start a church that would help people that have mental illness, or that have been sexually abused, or that have had
Yeah.
different things, because I feel like the church is really not prepared for those things, unfortunately. Like,
Hmm.
every time I've opened up about, "Hey, here's what I'm going through, can you help me?" They're like, "Oh, we can't help you, but maybe go see a psychiatrist." I'm like, why are you guys even here then? Like, the church is,
Yeah.
in my opinion, the church is supposed to be a hospital for broken
Yeah.
people. And so someone, I can't remember who it was, but someone said the church is the only place that shoots their wounded. And I'm like, that is so true, but so sad.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
it's really unfortunate. So that's my dream, is I would love to have a church that is open to everybody, whether you're gay or mentally ill or
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
abused or you're homeless. Like, come here and get healing, get hope, get
Yeah.
love and
Yeah.
acceptance, because like I said, there's not a lot of churches, unfortunately, that are prepared or willing to deal with people like
Yeah.
myself, or people that have went through things that I went through, which is really
And
unfortunate.
and even just those things that you said, hope, forgiveness,
Healing,
um, healing, all
love,
that. Like, yeah,
acceptance.
love, yeah, yeah, acceptance. All of those would are like probably what a lot of people need, to be honest. And the fact that some churches are not willing or able to give that, that sounds pretty shocking, to be honest.
It is. And honestly, like, unless I had went through the things I went through, I'd probably feel that way as well. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, I think that whether you're Christian or not, I think that you fear what you don't understand. Unless
Yeah.
you've been homeless or been in a mental hospital or been abused, you don't know what it's like. And you always
Yeah.
hear the horror stories and the 1% of, oh, that kid that was bullied went and shut up the school. Well, not every bullied
Yeah.
school kids shoot up schools or so on and
Yeah.
so forth. It's like,
Yeah.
just because something happened to you doesn't mean that you have to perpetuate that, or just because you have mental
Yeah.
illness doesn't
Totally.
mean that you have to go kill your girlfriend and put her head in the freezer. That's
Yeah.
not every mentally ill person or person with mental illness. I don't like that term,
Yeah.
mentally ill, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's like I said, I'm kind of learning to live without labels. And like I said, I've had a lot of people label me and try to put me down and put me in a box and say, this is who you are, this is what you'll be.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, like like I said, right now I don't have a great story of what I've done. I mean, I've traveled around a lot, I've had a lot of crazy experiences, but I don't have a college degree, I don't have a career, I don't have a house, I
Yeah.
don't have a family. Like I don't have all those things. And I'm really hopeful that one day I'll have those and
Yeah.
then be able to tell people, hey, look at me, I've not
Yeah.
arrived, but like there's hope. Right now it's kind of like, I
Yeah.
can give people hope, like stay alive and it'll get better,
Yeah.
but I kind of feel
Yeah. I
like
get
I'm in
it.
this perpetual stuck cycle where
Yeah.
I'm not really getting ahead. It's just kind of existing,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad at least you're in a better situation now. You got a car, you got a way to make money, you have a roof over your head. And
Yes.
yeah, I wish you the best and hope you stay stable as long as you can, and
Thank
keep
you.
on with your mission of helping others as well, because I think that that brings a lot of satisfaction to your life as well.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, thanks again. I really appreciate you
Yeah,
taking the time to talk, and
absolutely.
yeah, I wish you the best and have a great day.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me
All
on.
right.
Have a great day.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Take care, Brandon. Bye.